characters and scenarios while maintaining the theme of human ingenuity and the consequences of their actions in a galactic setting. Part 1. The Unexpected Discovery. Captain Zara Vex of the Galactic Confederation starship Nebula Seeker stood on the bridge, her 4 eyes scanning the holographic displays surrounding her. The ship's sensors had detected an anomaly in a nearby uninhabited system, and she had ordered an investigation. As they approached, her first officer, a towering Craxian named Gorn, reported their findings. "Captain, we're detecting an artificial structure on the 3rd planet. It appears to be of unknown origin." Zara's antennae twitched with curiosity. Unknown origin, that's unusual in this sector. Any life signs? "Negative, Captain," Gorm replied, his gravelly voice echoing through the bridge. "But there's an energy signature unlike anything in our database." Intrigued, Zara decided to lead a away team to investigate. As they prepared to teleport to the surface, she noticed their human science officer, Dr. Elara Chen, fumbling with her equipment. "Everything all right, Dr. Chen?" Zara asked, her mandibles clicking with mild concern. Elara looked up, her face flushed. "Yes, Captain, just a small calibration issue. Nothing to worry about." Little did they know, those words would soon prove fatefully inaccurate. The away team materialized on the planet's surface, a barren landscape dotted with crystalline formations that sparkled under the light of 2 distant suns. Before them loomed a massive structure, its architecture defying conventional understanding. As they approached, Ilara's tricorder began to emit a series of erratic beeps. "Fascinating," she muttered, tapping at the device. "The energy readings are off the charts. This structure seems to be generating power from, well, I'm not entirely sure." Zara felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Can you determine its purpose, Doctor?" Ilara shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Not yet, Captain, but if I can just adjust this setting." Suddenly, a brilliant light erupted from the structure, enveloping the away team. Zara felt a strange tingling sensation throughout her exoskeleton, and she heard Gorn's startled roar beside her. As quickly as it had appeared, the light vanished. Zara blinked her 4 eyes, trying to regain her bearings. "Status report," she barked. Gorn was the first to respond, his normally blue scales now tinged with a faint purple hue. I feel strange, Captain, but unharmed." Ilara was staring at her tricorder, her face pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "Dr. Chen," Zara prompted, a sense of dread creeping into her voice. Ilara looked up, her eyes wide. "Captain, I think I may have accidentally activated some kind of reality-altering device." "Reality-altering," Zara repeated, her antennae twitching rapidly. "Explain." "Well," Ilara began, her voice shaky, "according to these readings we've been shifted, slightly out of phase with our original reality. And it's not just us. The effect seems to be spreading." As if on cue, Zara's communicator chirped. It was the Nebula Seeker, reporting strange phenomena occurring throughout the sector. Stars changing color, planets shifting orbits, and spatial anomalies appearing out of nowhere. Zara turned to Ilara, all 4 of her eyes narrowing. "Dr. Chen, what exactly did you do?" Ilara gulped, clutching her tricorder tightly. I think I just said, 'Whoops' to the universe, Captain." And with those words, the true adventure began. The away team now faced a monumental task: figure out how to reverse the effects of the reality-altering device before the changes became permanent, all while navigating a rapidly changing galaxy. As they rushed back to the Nebula Seeker, Zara couldn't help but reflect on the irony. She had always heard stories about the unintended consequences of human actions, but she never imagined she'd be at the center of one. The ship's sensors were going haywire as they re-entered orbit. Stars blinked in and out of existence, and spatial rifts tore open in the fabric of space-time itself. "Dr. Chen," Zara said, her voice stern but not unkind, "I hope you're ready for a challenge. We need to fix this, and fast. Ilara nodded, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. Yes, Captain, I got us into this mess, and I'll do whatever it takes to get us out. As the Nebula Seeker walked away from the mysterious planet, its crew unaware of the full extent of the changes they had set in motion, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. And it all started with a human scientist's simple whoops. The Nebula Seeker raced through the chaotic, shifting space towards the nearest Galactic Confederation outpost. Captain Zara Vex stood at the helm, her 4 eyes darting between the view screen and the increasingly erratic sensor readings. "Status report," she demanded, her antennae twitching nervously. Gorn, still sporting his new purple hue, responded from his station. "Captain, we're approaching Starbase Epsilon, but it's not where it's supposed to be." Dr. Elara Chen looked up from her console, her face pale. The starbase has shifted about 3 light-years from its original position, and that's not all. Its molecular structure seems to be fluctuating. Zara chittered in frustration. "Hail them. We need to warn them about what's happening." As if on cue, the view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Starbase Commander Xylith. The normally stoic Arcturian appeared visibly shaken, their bioluminescent spots pulsing rapidly. "Nebula Seeker, thank the stars you're here," Xylith said, their voice quavering. "We're experiencing unprecedented phenomena. Our very reality seems to be unraveling." Zara took a deep breath. "Commander, we may have an explanation for that. We've accidentally activated an ancient device that's altering the fabric of reality itself." Xylith's eyes widened. "You've what?" Before Zara could respond, alarms blared across both the ship and the starbase. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, the starbase. It's phase shifting." On the view screen, Commander Xylith and the starbase behind them began to flicker and distort. "What's happening?" Xylith cried out, their form becoming increasingly transparent. "Commander," Zara shouted, "we'll fix this. Just hold on." But it was too late. With a flash of light and a sound like reality itself tearing, Starbase Epsilon vanished, leaving behind nothing but empty space and echoing static on the comm channel. The bridge of the Nebula Seeker fell into stunned silence. Zara turned slowly to face Ilara, who looked like she might be sick. "Dr. Chen," Zara said, her voice unnaturally calm, "please tell me you have some idea how to reverse this." Ilara swallowed hard. I'm working on it, Captain. The device seems to be rewriting the laws of physics themselves. If we can find a way to stabilize the quantum fluctuations, we might be able to." She was interrupted by Gorn's growl. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Galactic Confederation High Command." Zara steeled herself. On screen, the stern face of High Admiral Zix filled the view screen, his cybernetic eye glowing an ominous red. "Captain Vex," he barked, "I demand an explanation. We're receiving reports of reality distortions across half the galaxy, and your ship was the last one in contact with Starbase Epsilon before it vanished." Zara straightened her posture, fighting to keep her antennae still. "Admiral, I take full responsibility. During a routine exploration mission, we accidentally activated an ancient device of unknown origin. We're working on a solution as we speak." The Admiral's organic eye narrowed. "Accidentally. Captain, your recklessness may have doomed us all. I'm ordering you to return to Confederation space immediately for a full inquiry." Ilara stepped forward, her voice shaky but determined. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't do that. We're the ones who activated the device. We have the best chance of reversing its effects." Admiral Zix's cybernetic eye pulsed angrily. "And who are you to question my orders, human?" "She's the one who can fix this," Zara interjected, surprising even herself with her assertiveness. "Admiral, I understand your concerns, but Dr. Chen is right. We need to stay and solve this problem." The Admiral's face contorted with rage. "This is mutiny, Captain Vex. I'll have your commission for this. Zara took a deep breath. Then so be it, Admiral. But we're staying. Nebula Seeker out. She gestured to Gorn, who cut the transmission. The bridge fell silent once more, the weight of what they'd just done settling over the crew. Zara turned to face her team, her mandibles set in a determined expression. Well, she said, her voice steady, it seems we've just added diplomatic incident to our list of problems. Dr. Chen, you said something about stabilizing quantum fluctuations. Ilara nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Yes, Captain. If we can return to the planet and study the device more closely, I might be able to devise a way to reverse its effects. Then that's where we're going, Zara declared. Gorn set a course back to the planet. Maximum warp. As the Nebula Seeker turned and shot off into the walking space, Zara couldn't help but feel a mix of terror and exhilaration. They were now fugitives, racing against time to save reality itself, and it had all started with a simple human whoops. Little did they know, their troubles were only just beginning. As they hurtled through space, reality continued to twist and warp around them, promising challenges unlike anything they'd faced before. As the Nebula Seeker hurtled through the shifting cosmos, the crew worked tirelessly to navigate the increasingly unstable space. Captain Zara Vex stood at the helm, her 4 eyes fixed on the viewscreen as reality itself seemed to bend and warp around them. Status report, she demanded, her antennae twitching with anxiety. Gorn, his purple scales now shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence, responded from his station. Captain, our sensors are having difficulty maintaining a lock on our destination. The planet seems to be facing in and out of existence. Dr. Ilara Chen looked up from her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. The reality distortions are intensifying, Captain. We're seeing time dilation effects, spatial anomalies, even alternate versions of ourselves flickering in and out of phase. As if to punctuate her words, a ghostly image of another Nebula Seeker briefly superimposed itself over their ship before vanishing. Zara chittered in frustration. We need to reach that planet. Any suggestions on how to navigate this chaos? Ilara's eyes lit up. Actually, Captain, I might have an idea. If we can use the quantum entanglement properties of the reality distortions to our advantage, we might be able to create a stable corridor through the chaos. Explain, Zara prompted, her mandibles clicking with interest. Well, Ilara began, her hands flying over her console. If we modify our deflector dish to emit a focused beam of tachyons, we could theoretically anchor ourselves to a specific quantum state. It's risky, but it might allow us to cut through the distortions and reach the planet. Zara considered for a moment, then nodded. Do it. We're out of options and time. As Ilara and the engineering team worked to implement her plan, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared across the bridge. Captain, Gorn rolled. We're being pulled into a temporal rift. On the view screen, a swirling vortex of energy opened up before them, threatening to swallow the ship whole. Full reverse thrusters, Zara ordered, gripping her command chair. The ship groaned under the strain, but the rift's pull was too strong. Just as they were about to be drawn in, Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. Activating tachyon beam, now. A brilliant blue beam shot out from the ship's deflector dish, piercing the heart of the temporal rift. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like reality itself screaming, the rift began to collapse in on itself. The Nebula Seeker shot forward, riding the wavefront of the collapsing rift. The crew was thrown about as the ship tumbled through what seemed like an endless tunnel of swirling energy and fractured spacetime. When they finally emerged, the viewscreen showed a familiar sight, the mysterious planet where it all began. But something was different. Captain, Gorn said, his voice filled with awe, according to our chronometers, we've arrived, 3 days before we originally discovered the planet. Zara's antennae stood straight up in shock. We've traveled back in time. Ilara nodded, her face a mix of excitement and concern. It appears so, Captain. The tachyon beam must have interacted with the temporal rift in ways we couldn't have predicted. We've been given a second chance. As the implications of their situation sank in, a new alert sounded from Gorn's station. "Captain, we're detecting another ship in orbit. It's us. The Nebula Seeker from 3 days ago." Zara's mind raced. They had a chance to prevent the activation of the reality-altering device, but their very presence here risked creating a paradox that could tear the fabric of spacetime apart. "Options," she demanded, looking around at her crew. Elara spoke up, her voice tinged with both excitement and trepidation. "We could try to warn our past selves, prevent the activation of the device altogether. But that could create a temporal paradox." Gorn growled in disagreement. "We should destroy the device from orbit. Eliminate the threat before it can be activated." Zara considered both options, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Both plans carry enormous risks. If we interact with our past selves, we could erase our own timeline. If we destroy the device, we lose any chance of understanding and controlling its power." As the crew debated their next move, a new alert sounded. Gorn's eyes widened as he read the sensor data. "Captain, you're not going to believe this. We're detecting a third ship entering the system. It's the Nebula Seeker again, but different." On the view screen, a battered and modified version of their own ship shimmered into view. Its hull was scarred and augmented with unfamiliar technology, and it bore the marks of battles they had yet to fight. A transmission came through, and a familiar yet changed face appeared on the screen. It was Zara herself, but older, with scars across her exoskeleton and a cybernetic replacement for one of her eyes. The future Zara spoke, her voice wary but determined. "This is Captain Zara Vex of the Nebula Seeker, Timeline Gamma. We don't have much time. The device you're about to discover is more dangerous than you can possibly imagine, but destroying it isn't the answer. We need to master it." As the three versions of the Nebula Seeker faced each other in orbit around the mysterious planet, Zara realized that their simple exploration mission had become something far more complex and dangerous. They now faced a challenge that spanned not just space, but time itself. With the fate of reality hanging in the balance, Zara knew that whatever decision they made next would have consequences that would echo across the multiverse. And it had all started with a human scientist's innocent whoops. The three versions of the Nebula Seeker hung in orbit around the mysterious planet, a temporal standoff that threatened the very fabric of reality. Captain Zara Vex's mind raced as she considered the words of her future self. "Dr. Chen," Zara said, turning to her human science officer, "what are the implications of interacting with our future and past selves?" Elara's fingers flew over her console as she ran calculations. "It's unprecedented, Captain. The temporal mechanics alone are mind-boggling. But if what our future self says is true, we may not have a choice." Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. Gorm's gravelly voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, the temporal convergence is causing a feedback loop in our warp core." Zora's antennae twitched in alarm. "Explain." "The presence of three versions of our ship in one time stream is creating a quantum resonance," Elara interjected, her face pale. "It's overloading our systems. If we don't stabilize the warp core, we could trigger a chain reaction that would ripple across all our timelines." Without hesitation, Zara sprang into action. "Gorn, you have the bridge. Dr. Chen with me. We're going to engineering." As they raced through the corridors of the Nebula Seeker, the ship groaned and shuddered around them. Crew members from various species scrambled to maintain systems and prevent catastrophic failures. They burst into the engine room to find it in chaos. The warp core pulsed with an otherworldly light, tendrils of temporal energy arsing between consoles. The chief engineer, a Voltarian named Zix, was frantically working at the main control panel. "Captain," Zix's bioluminescent tentacles flashed in distress. "The core is destabilizing. We're looking at a temporal implosion in less than 5 minutes." Zara turned to Elara. "Options, Doctor." Elara's eyes darted around the engine room, taking in the readings from various displays. Suddenly, they widened with realization. The quantum resonance. Captain, I have an idea, but it's risky. At this point, Doctor, I'm open to anything, Zara chittered, her mandibles clicking anxiously. We need to synchronize the warp cores of all three ships, Ilara explained quickly. If we can align the quantum signatures, we might be able to stabilize the temporal field and prevent the implosion. Zara nodded. Do it. I'll contact the other ships. As Ilara and Zix worked feverishly to modify the warp core, Zara opened a channel to both the past and future versions of the Nebula Seeker. Explaining the situation rapidly, she was relieved to find her other cells quick to agree to the plan. Synchronization in 30 seconds. Ilara called out, her hands flying over the controls. The ship shuddered violently, and a bolt of temporal energy lashed out from the warp core, narrowly missing Zara. She could feel the heat of it singe her exoskeleton. 15 seconds. Consoles sparked and exploded around them. Zix used his tentacles to operate multiple stations simultaneously, fighting to keep the core from breaching. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Synchronizing now. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The chaotic energy coursing through the engine room stood still, suspended in time. Then, with a blinding flash and a sound like the universe itself exhaling, the temporal energies collapsed back into the warp core. The ship stopped shaking. The alarms fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was the heavy breathing of the engineering crew. Status report, Zara demanded, her voice hoarse. Ilara checked her readings, a look of disbelief on her face. It worked, Captain. The temporal field has stabilized. We've averted the implosion. A cheer went up from the engineering crew, but Zara knew their troubles were far from over. Good work, everyone. But we still have a bigger problem to solve. As if on cue, the comm system crackled to life. It was Zara's future self. Well done on averting disaster, but our window of opportunity is closing. We need to act now if we're going to master the device and prevent the catastrophe that awaits in my timeline. Zara nodded grimly. Understood. Dr. Chen, are you up for a field trip? Ilara, despite looking exhausted, managed a determined smile. Always, Captain. As they prepared to beam down to the planet's surface, joined by teams from both the past and future Nebula Seekers, Zara couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of their situation. 3 versions of herself about to confront a reality-altering device that had been accidentally activated by a human's simple whoops. The fate of the universe hung in the balance, and Zara knew that whatever happened next would change everything. As the transporter beam engulfed them, she found herself wondering, not for the first time, if having humans on her crew was a blessing or a curse. Either way, there was no turning back now. The swirling energies of the transporter beam dissipated, revealing the barren landscape of the mysterious planet. 3 teams, each from a different point in time, materialized near the imposing structure housing the reality-altering device. Captain Zara Vex surveyed the scene, her 4 eyes taking in the subtle differences between her past and future selves. The past Zara looked uncertain, while the future Zara bore the scars of battles yet to come. All right, Zara said, addressing the assembled crews. We have one shot at this. Dr. Chen, what's our plan? Ilara stepped forward, her eyes darting between the 3 versions of her captain. Based on what we've learned from our future selves, we need to interface with the device and find a way to control its reality-altering properties. If we can do that, we might be able to reverse the damage and stabilize the multiverse. The future Zara nodded grimly. In my timeline, we failed to master the device. The consequences were catastrophic. Entire galaxies wiped from existence, civilizations erased from history. As they approached the structure, the air around them seemed to shimmer and distort. Reality itself appeared to be bending, twisting in ways that made Zara's exoskeleton crawl. Captain, Gorm growled, his scales shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors. I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations. The device is becoming more unstable by the second. Ilara's face paled as she studied her tricorder. He's right. We don't have much time before the device's effects become irreversible. They entered the structure, finding themselves in a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing, crystalline object. Tendrils of energy oozed from its surface, each one seeming to tear small holes in the fabric of reality. That's it, the future, Zara said, her cybernetic eye glowing ominously. The Nexus, as we came to call it, the source of our triumph and our downfall. Ilara approached the device cautiously, her tricorder beeping frantically. The quantum fluctuations are off the charts. I've never seen anything like it. Suddenly, the Nexus pulsed violently, sending out a shockwave that knocked everyone off their feet. As Zara struggled to stand, she saw reality fracturing around them. Glimpses of other worlds, other timelines, flashed in and out of existence. We're running out of time, the past, Zara shouted, her antennae twitching wildly. Dr. Chen, what do we do? Ilara's eyes darted between her tricorder and the Nexus, her mind racing. I think I see a pattern in the fluctuations. If we can synchronize our efforts, we might be able to stabilize it. The three Zaras exchanged glances, then nodded in unison. Tell us what to do, they said in perfect synchronization. What followed was a frantic dance of science and intuition. Ilara called out instructions, guiding the three teams as they worked to interface with the Nexus. Gorn and his counterparts used their strength to physically manipulate parts of the device, while the Zaras coordinated their efforts. As they worked, the chamber descended into chaos. Reality continued to fracture around them, with ghostly images of alternate timelines bleeding through. Zara saw versions of herself that had never existed, one where she had chosen a different career, another where her species had evolved differently. Just when it seemed they were making progress, disaster struck. A particularly violent pulse from the Nexus sent Ilara flying across the chamber, her tricorder shattering against the far wall. No, Zara cried out, rushing to the human's side. Ilara was conscious but dazed, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. I'm okay, Ilara mumbled, trying to focus her eyes. But without the tricorder, I can't guide the stabilization process. The future Zara's cybernetic eye flashed in alarm. Without Dr. Chen's calculations, we're doomed. This is how it happened in my timeline. This is where we failed. Zara looked from Ilara to the pulsing Nexus, feeling the weight of all reality pressing down on her. In that moment, she made a decision that would alter the course of history. No, she said firmly. We're not failing this time. She turned to Ilara. Dr. Chen, I need you to guide me. Tell me everything you know about the device's patterns. Ilara's eyes widened in realization. Captain, you can't. The human mind isn't equipped to process that level of information. It could kill you. Zara's mandibles set in a determined expression. And if we do nothing, reality itself will unravel. I'm willing to take that risk. Captain Zarovek's eyes fluttered open, all four of them struggling to focus on the familiar ceiling of the Nebula Seeker's med bay. The events in the Nexus chamber felt like a distant dream, yet the residual ache in her exoskeleton reminded her of their reality. Easy there, Captain, came Dr. Ilara Chen's voice from beside her. You've been through quite an ordeal. Zara turned her head, antennae twitching as she took in the sight of her human science officer. Ilara looked exhausted but relieved, a bandage still visible on her forehead. The Nexus. Zara managed to croak out. Ilara smiled. Stable. Thanks to you, Captain. You did what we thought was impossible. You interfaced directly with the device and brought the multiverse back from the brink of collapse. As Zara's mind cleared, the memories came flooding back, the overwhelming rush of information, the feeling of reality itself bending to her will. She shuddered slightly at the recollection. The other timelines? Our past and future selves. Gone, Ilara replied. or rather, reintegrated. When you stabilize the nexus, it seems to have merged our timelines. We're the only versions of ourselves left. Zara took a moment to process this information, and the Galactic Confederation, the changes to reality. Mostly reversed, came a gravelly voice from the doorway. Gorn entered, his scales back to their original blue hue. There are remnants, echoes of what happened. But the universe is largely back to normal. High Admiral Zix sends his congratulations and his apologies. Zara chittered in amusement. I bet that was difficult for him. As she attempted to sit up, assisted by Ilara, Zara noticed something odd. Her perception seemed different, sharper somehow. Dr. Chen, are you sure there were no lasting effects from my interaction with the Nexus? Ilara hesitated, then nodded. We've detected some changes in your neural patterns, Captain. It seems your direct interface with the device has enhanced your cognitive abilities. You're processing information faster, seeing connections that weren't visible before. Zara flexed her mandibles, considering this. I suppose that's a small price to pay for saving reality. About that, Ilara said, a hint of guilt in her voice. Captain, I want to apologize. This whole situation was caused by my carelessness, my whoops, as humans say. Zara regarded her science officer for a long moment, then did something that surprised everyone in the room. She laughed. It was a clicking, chittering sound that filled the med bay. Dr. Chen, Zara said once she composed herself, in all my years of space exploration, I've learned one thing about humans: you're unpredictable, sometimes dangerously so. Ilara winced, but Zara continued, but that unpredictability, that capacity for both monumental mistakes and incredible solutions, is what makes you invaluable. Gorn rumbled in agreement. The captain's right. No other species would have fought to synchronize the warp cores or guide the captain through interfacing with the Nexus. Your whoops nearly doomed us all, but your ingenuity saved us. Ilara blinked, clearly taken aback by this assessment. I thank you, both of you. I promise to be more careful in the future. Oh, I have no doubt you'll be careful, Zara said, her antennae twitching in amusement. But I also have no doubt that this won't be the last time a human whoops leads us into an adventure. And frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. As if on cue, the ship's comm system chirped. Bridge to Captain Vex, came the voice of the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. It appears to be an invitation. Zara exchanged glances with Ilara and Gorn, seeing the same mix of trepidation and excitement in their eyes that she felt. Well then, Zara said, swinging her legs off the bed, despite Ilara's protests, let's go see what new chaos the universe has in store for us, shall we? As they made their way to the bridge, Zara couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their situation. A simple human mistake had nearly unraveled the fabric of reality, but human ingenuity, combined with the diverse strengths of her interstellar crew, had saved it. The Nebula Seeker cruised through the stars, its crew forever changed by their brush with multiversal chaos. And at its heart, a captain who now saw the universe through new eyes, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, human-induced or otherwise. As they stepped onto the bridge, the view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that made even Zora's newly enhanced mind reel. Whatever was coming next, she knew one thing for certain: life aboard the Nebula Seeker would never be boring, not with the human factor in play. And truthfully, she wouldn't want it any other way.